Okay, like to sort of wrap it up, the idea would then be that we would need to graduate from this stage by doing this work of individuation, which would mean becoming whole, in becoming undivided, which should be then uniting the opposites, of which one we call the shadow, the other one is the dominant side, which I have retrieved to being the yin and the yang. The idea, the symbol of the yin and the yang in terms of the east was actually before it came apart. So it's this, in this way we can track the stages, and then with as it were, with the figure of Jesus, the fishes would have come apart, the yin and the yang, and then we would have fallen into this individualistic or individual stage of consciousness or level of consciousness, disconnected from the collective, which is when the fishes are still together, which would then be like the Eastern mind. And when we would reconnect the fishes, we would, which would then be equivalent to the carrying of the cross, then we would resurrect, and resurrect would be the self. But there would be no way to go from ego to self, which is like where we're stuck now, with the idea of these practices, or what would be called then the blissing out idea of a way to run away from the shadow, the ego, for instance, looking at self as a way of becoming some superhero and achieving superpowers or fame or whatever, but actually being a way to escape the shadow, which would be like feelings of inferiority and being worthless. And then you would have this, the resurrection would then be the connect, the coming, the incarnation of the deeper self, which would then be like the self we would have been in the beginning before the exiting of the garden, which then be like the higher Adam or Eve. So like Adam and Eve was like, out of Adam came Eve's, would together would should be like the feminine and the masculine, and then together they would become back the higher self. So obviously, before the fall, you had several, you had many higher Adams and Eves, if you wish, which would be then self figures, what we would call the self archetype. And so then you would find that these self figures would be able to connect to a collective, which would then be the collective unconsciousness, which would then be what we would what we would call then like the prophecy, or the myth, or the true singularity, because then we would become back like one mind, but premised on these self figures, which should be individual consciousness, individuals, real individuals. And so this would not be like the idea of an absolutist collective consciousness, in which the individual would be submitted to some collective thing. So then we would, so that's the point where, to end the discussion and to end where we started. In the beginning, then it was said then that we become back. They have become like us, knowing good and evil, which would mean then that we would become like them. Us is a collective. So then this collective together, these several selves connected up together in terms of this collective unconscious mind, unconscious, would then be equivalent to this, what in the beginning would be called gods. We would have become like the gods, if you wish, and which should be nothing else than that we would become like fully continent and aware that we have this creative power, and that we can create our image, our vision, and our thoughts. And that would be when, as it were, we would become back sovereign and whole, but self-conscious. And that would tie into the whole idea that how Jung said that Yahweh would have been like unconscious of his shadow. And then at the end of the whole thing, you would get back, like as it were, this collective, which would be then the original form of Yahweh, which would be, I'm not mistaken, referred to, I think, as the Elohim or something. And then we would be back this, we would become back this this collective, creative creator consciousness, and that would be the completion of the process. And so to reach to that, back to that stage, which is represented in the Book of Revelation as it were, the New Jerusalem, if you wish, then the only way would be through the shadow, because the West would be, as it were, at the forefront of this development. And while the indigenous, of which also the East is a part, they are this original wholeness, but now slowly but surely all have been, as it were, infected with this ego consciousness, and following the, and which is important. But in the West, we would be, as it were, in America, if you wish, in Americas, um, and in the West of Europe, we would be then at the cutting edge of this development. And out of this, like, I think Jung is one of the first. It's like in Europe, Jung would be then the one that would have understood this completely, and then and passed this on, and now we are at the verge of possibly, as it were, graduating to the stage of this, of the self, and if and these selves reconnecting in terms of this collective mind, which would then be a mind able to create a creator mind. So the point is to make clear that the ego is not an evil thing. It's all about the ego, the mystery of the ego. But the ego would have taken us to these deepest to the deepest level of fragmentation, almost as Jung even and other the myth of Jesus also says, down into hell, if you wish, down into these lower realms, dark lower realms. But that at that point we would be able to become conscious, self-aware, and then you would get then the whole point of going back up to the self, finding this collective connection with other selves, which would then be these tribes, and then becoming a conscious creator, like as the in the book of Genesis is referred to in terms of they have become like us, meaning, of course, they will become as us. And then you have the days of creation in the myth, in which the seventh day was a day of rest, meaning that the creation was not complete, but at the end of this seventh day we would have completed it. But this is the beauty of the process, is that if you wish, the creator would have entered his or her own creation in order to complete it. So here it's not some external force completing the creation, the creature, but the creature, by merging with the creator, completing itself. And that is true sovereignty and freedom. And we need to now not look outside of us and not outside of the planet and not for some aliens or some beings, but we are the ascended masters, if you wish. We are them that we have been waiting for, which is the self with the capital S. And then together we complete ourselves, and no other way is wholeness. Any other way would be that some external force would be regulating us, finishing us. But now the only true sovereignty is when we complete ourselves. And this is why Jung's answer to Job was such an earthquake for organized religion, because what Jung was actually, it's all there actually, because if Jesus is called God, then it's already saying that God entered the creation. And just to finalize, this is beautiful. It's a beautiful thing, because this is not then some God that is out there and having created something and then looking on, but this is the true leader. This is true leadership, because here the leader enters the creation and shows the way as a creature, as part of the. This is like the captain that doesn't abandon ship, or the platoon leader that shows the way. You see, and this is how, this is the, as it were, God in his or her own creation as us. And then we also end this whole idea of a projection of God as a God above. But then we merge back with this, and one could then conceive finally then that what we would be then one fractal of source energy, becoming aware of its own creative sourceness and able to create sovereignly. And that would then, at the cosmic level, be, as it were, the whole thing, the whole model of the different parts of original sourceness graduating, entering this cycle of the evolution of consciousness, and graduating as a conscious creator.